popular game or toy?
In
Singapore.
By the power of Craze.
Wow, this brings back memories. There was lots of screaming and shouting when we played these games and say, "You cheated, you cheated."
Gaming is very important in helping to train the first digital generation.
This is the collections from 2000 McDonald's.
A bunch of people ended up in hospital, right?
without games and toys, I believe Singapore will be a bunch of boring people.
Oh, what is it?
Player that shouts the loudest gain one dream. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Games and toys are massive in Singapore. So it's become part of everyday life. Ta-da! Aha! Another part of my childhood. Can I take this home when I'm done?
5 stones. Gone.
Yeah, this was my favorite game, Donkey Kong.
In our play culture, we kind of embrace everything. It's not uncommon to see He-Man kind of put together with a Gundam model.
But it has not always been like that.
We are reaching the 60 years of our modern history. It's important sometimes to bring back some of these pieces of history, albeit they are toys.
The story of toys and games is interesting in that sense that it's a snapshot of how Singapore developed and is developing.
I think you gotta like
No, give me this stick here. Is it like that?
what is the name of this toy?
Beyblade.
Almond and bottle cap.
Yeah, stand away, I'm scared. Oh no! Hey, Alex, we broke.
Okay, we are Singapore Gussing team.
大多数是在马来西亚比赛，还有一些文莱，印尼也有。
Gussing actually is traditional games, but it's open to everybody.
1960年代，我跟他的爸爸在三乡那边，以前没有这个盖的，有泥土就可以玩了。
Okay, this is the place that we build a gussing from a timber, and these are the joining parts. So after we done everything, we put all this metal, we cut until become something like this.
1960年代以前没有美宣的，就是慢慢用手工的，也有用刀做的也有。
I think we have to understand that the 1960s, the life of Singaporeans in those days are very, very different from what we have today.
We were a poor country. So normally in the 60s, children in Singapore still try to play with toys that they can create themselves.
Things like chapte.
We used to pluck the feathers from the feather duster, and then we will get rubber from old tire tubes, and then we put a nail through.
White stones were made from cloth bags and with sand and grain. Quite amazing in some ways.
Singapore.
Malaysia.
Thailand.
Malaysia.
Singapore.
A lot of these games, the ancient Greeks, ancient Chinese, ancient Persians, they were playing a variation of this kind of games. These games would have come to us through generations, decades, centuries of people moving from place to place. For example, 剑子, if we say that it's an ancient Chinese games, as the Chinese moved down to Nanyang, as this part of the world was known, they would have brought it along with them, which brings to the point where a lot of these games that travel over different places, they don't generally require a lot of resources to make.
Those were the times when games were more improvised from the daily materials that are around you.
Yeah, welcome to Kolam Air Gasing Court.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for inviting
Okay. So this gasing that we was playing.
Alright.
So what games are you guys playing?
So we have Beyblade.
So for the Beyblade, it came out during the year 2000.
I think it was so popular to the point, right, that almost every other void that you see kids playing Beyblade.
So when we first heard that there's a competition between Gasing and Beyblade X,
So initially we were thinking maybe our Beyblade will destroy the casting. Because metal, right? Okay, so now right, we'll start off with the defending. So we will launch first. Their objective, right, is to, as minimal a launch as possible, try to get rid of all our Beyblades. 3, 2, 1, go shoot! Let's go! Wow, 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 uncle is serious. Oh my god!
when we see that they throw,
Yeah, the first hit, I was like, oh my god! Wow, even the plate also break.
Sometimes kampungs will have competitions with each other. One is very simply the top that spins the longest will win. Another competition be people would draw a huge circle on the usually sandy ground. You are supposed to try to knock one of the tops out with a top.
以前是甘崩的时代，如果要叫别的甘崩的人来友谊赛了，就要写信。改天他们会叫我们回去他的甘崩玩。
When communities get together, they engineer an experience, and for gasing, you'll try to look at what string to use, what is the density of your top, how do you make it stay spinning longer. So there's a lot of things that can be passed down from one player to another player, and that experience actually brings a lot of people together.
Okay, so after trying out just now, the accuracy is actually very, very important, and the timing of pulling back is also very important for the gasing to actually spin and all that.
Sekarang budak-budak sekarang semua tak instructor nak ambil gasing ni semua. Kan? Sekarang semua banyak handphone, semua komputer semua.
Why yours still play gasing?
Because most of us we like families.
By the 1970s rolled along, kids, they have a lot more resources available to them. There were more manufactured toys specifically for kids. A lot of these toys were very simple toys. They were made out of plastic.
The museum collection has toys from more than 50 countries. This is of course inspired by the Bluebird, the British racer. And what is interesting here is that, of course, these are made in Singapore.
We've made a promising start for the 70s. Unemployment is at an all-time low. This dramatic drop in unemployment is the result of two factors. First, rapid expansion in the industrial and servicing sectors.
Around the 1970s, there were toy factories that were set up in Singapore, from Hong Kong, from America, from different places.
It may surprise you, this is the first time I'm opening it. This toy was made by Blue Box, the Hong Kong company, and they set up a factory in Singapore. This is of course modeled after American car. Obviously, they also will sell some of the toys in Singapore, but primarily Blue Box, their target is mainly the West, UK, US. Yeah, thanks. This was made by the Corgi, which happened to have a factory in Singapore. This is a Woody Woodpecker. There is a print here that clearly shows 1979. The company, they had to try and look at how to reduce cost. That's when I believe they turned to Singapore to try to make the toy.
So most factories, although there were quite a number of toy factories,
they tend to open for a short while, and then after that they close down.
There's always a move towards higher value chain products.
Becoming a hub for services sort of became the next focus, especially from the 80s onwards.
And you can also say that industrialisation also brought about Singapore's economic development and prosperity that allowed many more kids, families to actually purchase what you call foreign imports. They are linked to television and movie productions.
Is macho personified.
He's a big muscle guy with a huge axe and a sword and kind of brown fluffy underwear.
Wait for Daddy to come in first. I'm gonna take over Carson Street. Oh no, who's this?
I'm Shira. It came out again.
Oh, came out again. Yeah, I don't need the shoe, okay? Don't need the shoe.
By the power of Craze.
Okay. Looks like you guys are too powerful. Okay, Charlotte, can you tell me what's the lesson of this story that we are playing?
Superheroes and bad guys.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
This one brings back so much memories. The toys from the 80s, especially action figures if you like, they were tied to TV series. They were very American series.
He-Man is a
topless action figure.
I have the power!
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are
talking turtles in funny colored suits.
Ninjas in the hard shell, turtle power, there you go.
Transformers are
robots.
Oh my, this going to do it on national TV? Along those lines.
I can't remember the exact timing where the shows appear on TV, but I do remember after school I would come back and then try and finish out all my school homework and all that, and then get ready to sit by the TV by around 6 p.m. Yeah, so it's basically for children's shows at the slot. After you watch the cartoons, you want to get the toys. After you play the toys, you want to watch the cartoon more. So that's how it becomes so popular.
By the 1980s, TV became very commonplace.
Back then, Singapore, being part of the international system, that it's more aligned to Western Europe and America, of course, it is not unusual to be absorbing so much American culture.
So this character's name is called Bazzor, and he's actually from the cartoon series Silverhawks. So I can actually do this, basically activate his weapons by the side. Okay, the next toy I have, this character, he's actually called Firefly from the cartoon series Mask, M-A-S-K. So the cool thing about this toy is that it looks like an ordinary racing car, right? When I press, so it now becomes a fighter jet. There's also another button where I press, it will drop a bomb. And finally, I have He-Man from Masters of the Universe. When you poke it, right? When you poke it, you can see that it creates this better damage effect, right? So one more time, you get two slashes. So when we play toys, I might take the good guy, and then my cousin or my brother might take the bad guys, or vice versa, right? And then we will try to act out a scene, most likely from the cartoons itself.
Don't be too surprised when we, as kids, we were a bit rough with our toys and we tend to smash them in each other. We will role play as these characters as well. And because of that, that's how we pick up the manner of expressions and the speech patterns that these toys.
Kawabanga, Ninja Turtles. You know the jargons, you know the kind of daily speeches, which actually makes a big difference for Singaporeans, you know, relating to the rest of the world. Doesn't make people Americans, but at the very least, it makes you comfortable with this worldview, this perspective, like something like G.I. Joe, you know, that this is a kind of a very military culture. But having said that, I think there is something very special about American pop culture, its imagination, its possibilities that is unthinkable in many places.
I mean, in real life, no turtle talks, right?
Playing toys, so it kind of helped me become a more creative person. Let's imagine that there's no such toys in the past. I think I would probably be doing a very different job. Probably not in animation at all and not teaching animation.
In the 80s, I mean, consumerism was really in the shade in Singapore. I think for kids growing up that era, right, so the place to look forward to is the toy section in the departmental stores of the shopping centre. And then you can see the opening of the first huge toy shop, Toys R Us.
What Toys R Us brought was a centralized sort of a store. They sold everything from a baby toy to a teenager toy.
And they even have a kind of anthem for Toys R Us, you know? It's like, I don't want to grow up, but I'm a Toys R Us kid. They have millions of toys you can play with.
From bikes to trains to video games, it's the greatest toy store there is. Wee. Correct or not? Gee whiz! Hi, I'm Michael Yeo, the first General Manager of Toys R Us in Singapore. This building here is exactly where we started our first store in Singapore. In fact, this store was the very first international store for Toys R Us outside of the USA and Canada.
Hi, Mike. How are you? Michael, you remember last time? I think for the girls, right, Barbie is very, very popular.
Oh yeah, every girl needed to have Barbie last time. You still have it here, right?
Yes.
Wow. Hot Wheels, I remember Hot Wheels.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the track, remember?
Yes.
I remember when the kids play the track, the hard time is us because you have to help to keep it.
Right. Why did Toys R Us choose Singapore to be the first international location? I think at that time in the 80s, it's about Singapore's reputation as a commercial, industrial, financial hub. Singapore was a good starting point to get into Asia. I think there's also an economic and social background. As in economy boom, our people became more sophisticated, more worldly. So there's this understanding about toys and how it leads to children's development.
So it was a wonderland for kids, right? If you want to relate it to childhood, by the 80s, the family planning policy was very successful. Parents, instead of having to worry about feeding 10 kids, I only have 2 to cater to. So kids were beginning, I suppose, to be treated as precious now.
And toys were not just the only thing happening in the shopping centres. The video games were also making their debut.
Aha! These are tokens from very whimsical arcades from days gone by.
Yeah. So YY Wonder Space and Fun World, yeah. Jackie, okay. So this was some of the places.
Video games is this new era for us to experience. When it comes to toys, a lot of the toys that you get are quite static. For video games, you get immersed in these new worlds.
When I go to the arcade, it was in my teenage years. There are only a few types of machines, right? It's all two-player games. We'll look for the game that we want to play, and if there's someone playing, we'll put in a token and then we'll challenge them. They are usually strangers, and I think that's the thrill of it. So basically, this was the game that I first started playing, Street Fighter. It's just two of us trying to outdo each other. So there are some special moves like you can throw a fireball and do an uppercut. And now he's too slow.
Very interesting. Oh, you do this semicircle, you do this quarter circle, something will come up.
So back then, arcades, they were much more for teenagers and they were more male-dominated.
Even kids that don't usually play games will go there to socialize.
It was symptomatic of the urban displacement that was happening around with the entire transformation of Singapore from rural settlements, kampong houses to public housing. Your rural neighborhoods, the places where your neighbors can watch you. Activities kind of disrupted, and a lot of the whole generation found themselves perhaps in more isolated environments, and these arcade parlors provided the kind of places for community gathering.
So during the time when I was going to the arcade, we also have consoles.
The flip side, video gaming at home was vastly different.
My first version of the Game Boy from Nintendo is this one, without any color. It's just
calculator screen. It's a calculator screen.
What we did was, in the old days, right, to be able to view better, we had this magnifier. Like, it was a lifesaver. What happened after that? Wow, very shook, right? It's a bigger screen.
I think Game Boy Advance, they start to have colors on the screen. Then later on, DS Lite came out, and one of the screens is a touch screen.
Gaming is really important because that was part of Singapore's engagement with digital culture. So digital culture actually came first with the gaming, rather than any other kind of instrumental purposes. You can say retrospectively very important in helping to train the first digital generation. How do you interact with electronic materials? Without gaming, the learning process would be a lot steeper.
When I was young, there were a lot of studies, right? So when you go into the sound, the atmosphere, you go inside, you feel like you are in a world that is different from outside. And I think that's the beauty of it.
I think looking at the 80s, 90s, digital games, electronic games, different kinds of action figures.
Why you are able to embrace all this because there's a little bit of spending power.
It, spoke to a period of time where Singapore was becoming a first world country.
But in January 2000, there was a
huge hula balloon.
People were getting hysterical, scoffers were breaking out.
How can we be first world when we go crazy for a soft toy?
In the latest twist to the Hello Kitty saga, McDonald says the last pair of stuffed toy cats in the Hello Kitty series will not be sold at any of its restaurants next Thursday. The latest crush for the pair of toys saw 6 people being arrested, 3 for rioting and the rest for disorderly behaviour after fights broke out at several McDonald's outlets overnight.
In January 2000, McDonald's had a limited sale of Hello Kitty, certain Hello Kitty dolls.
I remember long queues of people queuing up just to buy these creatures every week at McDonald's.
time for the surprise. Ah, look familiar?
Hello Kitty.
So this Hello Kitty is from the McDonald's in the 2000s. I wonder how many of our audiences would have the full sets in this shrink wrap.
Hello, welcome to my house. So this is the collections from 2000 McDonald. Okay, this first set is a Chinese wedding costume, Japanese costume from Korea, space set, the Malay costume, and this one is the Western style. I think the first time when I first met Hello Kitty, right, is on a pencil case. So the cuteness really just like immediately drawn to me. So it's just like first love at the very first sight.
Back in that time, in the 90s and 2000s, a lot of the other Japanese toys were also part of our culture. You get the mecha toys like Gundams,
or the Pokemon cards.
Tamagotchi, the egg thing where you're supposed to kind of treat it as a pet and feed it regularly and, you know, clean up its poop. So it was interesting because for the longest time we have the American pop culture scene and so on. And now we are sort of turning eastwards towards Japan. Japan was emerging very quickly as a cultural powerhouse. So they were exporting their products everywhere else.
Japanese toys had a fundamentally different worldview. The American versions, they actually very much reflective of a kind of American worldview, the saving the world, characterized by the mastered He-Man. Whereas the Japanese one is very tech-based, that the machine takes precedence over the kind of individual. And then on the other contrast, you have very cutesy characters like Hello Kitty, Pokemon, more infantile kind of characters that are meant to endear.
The McDonald's Hello Kitty was a massive craze because it was regarded as a collectible.
So the culture has moved from play to collection, it's moved from kids to adults.
But I guess it did raise the question of human behavior. Singapore may have been a first world country, but our people are behaving in a very third world way. You know, that sort of criticisms that were floating around.
So I got this set from my friend. I don't know why she bought this as well. Like maybe she wanted to join the crowd.
Maybe for Singapore, they put the word as kiasuism. Why are people still wanting to get the Hello Kitty doll? You know, even they don't play with it. Maybe that is based on a broader sense of social anxiety that I'm still feeling being left out in this competitive economy.
So it's not just Hello Kitty, but anytime you see a good deal, a bargain.
Here at home, eager buyers spend Sunday morning queuing for the English version of this Japanese virtual pets.
You see long queues of people. The way I look at it is this is one way for us to deal with the pressure and stress of living in a highly urbanized environment. So this is the little piece of heaven for me. I'll go and buy it because I have nowhere else to spend the money.
Hello Kitty, she reminds me to keep things simple, to keep things joyful.
Did you know Hello Kitty is not a cat?
It's a girl. It's proven from the official website.
For the longest time, like I said, we've been playing with foreign toys, right?
We can see that Singapore has generally followed the trends in globalization, in global consumer cultures. Then the next question is that why are there no like locally made toys and other kinds of games?
In your memory, was there a game or toy you played that has a Singapore element or design to it?
Oh, Monopoly. Is it Monopoly? Oh, I think this was the one most of us would have played as a kid. I think this is the original UK version. So you have King's Cross Station, Whitechapel Road. Then you have all receive for services, $25. What services? I have no idea, and let's not go there.
Here we go. Alright, this is Monopoly, the Singapore edition. So, the Monopoly Singapore edition came about in the 1980s.
I remember feeling kind of intrigued. It was the first time we are seeing Singapore on international games. Colombo Court, Havelock Road, St Andrews.
This road is St Andrews Road. And if you remember, the Padang was the place for the National Day Parade. The other road, parallel to this, on the other side of the Padang is Connaught Drive. Why was this chosen for Monopoly? I guess these two roads were, if you like, signature roads in the 1980s in Singapore. Yes, I remember this. This was a contest run in the 80s, and the publishers of Monopoly wanted to Singaporeanize their game. That's why they had run a public contest to gauge public opinion and sentiment on what the public thought were cheapo properties. Middle class areas, important districts in the city. So I came across this contest in the Business Times, and I decided to just enter the contest for fun. Ah, yes. These are the contest results. The panel discovered that just as many readers thought Queen Astrid Park was the perfect equivalent of Mayfair and Park Lane. City Hall turned out to be the most popular equivalent for Pall Mall, Whitehall, Northumberland Avenue, and Marylebone Station. Dilemma indeed. The judges finally came up with a list of correct answers. The choices of the contestants were then compared with the list. 1 point was awarded to each correct name and position. Here they are. And I see my name among the list at position number 6.
The reason why a lot of international brands likes to pick up on local franchise is because there is already a target audience that's ready to accept it, right? Well, in the 1987, when this edition of Monopoly was produced, Singapore was a young nation. We are also looking for our own identity. It's always good to see your stuff being put on the map.
Wow, this brings back memories. Let's start with the cheapo properties. There's Geylang Road, Serangoon Road, and we have one of the first MRT stations along the north-south line, Ang Mo Kio. Now moving to the CBD area, but strangely it says free parking next to Robinson Road. That's not quite correct. There's no free parking anywhere in the CBD that I can remember. Now moving higher up the value chain, we have Battery Road, Empress Place, and Connaught Drive. Here we are, sitting right beside Connaught Drive, right? Today, of course, Connaught Drive is now closed to traffic. This is a small episode in the history of Singapore, but it shows this growing consciousness that all of us had, that we were coming into our own as a nation. We should be proud of our local place names, our local vernacular even, you know. If we had a localized game, we could identify more with the game.
When Singapore games industry first started in the 2000s, there was an ongoing conversation on what should Singaporean games look and feel like.
These are designed by Singaporeans. We have games about the different type of kopi, about the durians, One of the games, it sells so well that it actually exceeds our expectations.
What is it?
The Singaporean Dream. Yam Sing. All players to say Yam Sing in a single breath. Player who can last the longest gains one dream.
Noisy woohoo bird that turns to shout woohoo. Player that shouts the loudest gain one dream.
Ooh is bird? Apa? Oh, itu burung paginya.
3, 2, 1, go ya!
Woohoo!
Okay, Azhar. Aket.
Say!
There you go. The Singaporean Dream is a very well-known game in Singapore. So, I always thought the Complaint Queen was an interesting one. Fine, no chewing gum.
We started this board games cafe at the year of 2004. We do sell local design games by the Singaporean. So at the current moment, I would think that there's easily at least more than 50 local Singaporeans who are designing the games and have it published. I believe most of them started as part-times while they are still holding on to a very professional jobs. Some of them are doctors, lawyers, writers. So they develop interest while playing games at home or at a cafe, and they are inspired, oh, I can do it better. So they decided to sort of take it as a project. One of the game, Singaporean Dream, it sells so well that it actually exceeds our expectations. In fact, it was listed as one of the top seller in Toys R Us among all the toys that they retail, year 2023.
Hi, I'm Teresa, the creator and illustrator of the Singaporean Dream.
I'm Rick, and I focus on bringing our games to a wider audience.
So the concept of the Singaporean Dream actually came to me just as about when I was graduating university, and at that time all of the conversations that happened around me was if I was getting a job or if I was applying for a BTO flat, and that left me feeling very anxious. And it made me think, you know, is this truly the Singaporean dream? Is this what we're working towards?
Okay, so in this game, right, basically I choose a personality card, NSF Army Boy, right? My dream is to be CBD office lady. One of my dreams is year-end bonus. Auntie as a personality is to have cash out my CPF, early retirement.
It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of expression of our belief system, of why we work and slogging through the hours. But it also opens up a channel for us to laugh at ourselves, right? And that is a very big move away from the serious selves that we see in the 80s and 90s.
Get, what's this word? Married. Get married in 5-star hotel. It's a very good hotel. It's good. But then everybody see. Shame.
Retire early.
My dreams are to retire before reaching 40 years old. And the second one is 6 points for O-level. My dreams are 7 points for O-level.
Yeah, I think personally it was important to have this game made because the biggest question we had at that time was, why isn't there a Singaporean card game? I mean, there's so much culture, there's so much quirks in Singapore that we celebrate.
A lot of our local retailers actually ordered to carry more on the Singaporean games rather than the international games. Yeah, it's definitely thriving.
So for our local game developers, there was an ongoing conversation on what should Singaporean games look and feel like. What can we export from our culture? So when Ghost Law first was released, the game community in Singapore really welcomed this because it goes to show how well we can do on the international stage.
Ghost Law is a game where you fight monsters based on Singaporean and Southeast Asian folklore. It's not just the ghosts that are from local folklore, but you will find that the environments are very, very inspired by Singapore. And in addition to that, we also actually allow you to cook food in the game.
The food thing was something he was very adamant about. He was like, the food must be in the game, if not I'm walking away from it.
I always knew that I wanted to do a retro game because I was inspired by the games that I grew up with when I was a teenager. But for the Singaporean part, that actually came a bit later because I asked some friends about it and they were actually saying that maybe if you switch the setting over to a Singaporean setting, maybe that is something that it will make it unique and will make it stand out. I didn't really care about whether it's so or not.
Also, I think he was like very cynical about this. Even to the last day, he was like, yeah, I think if we sell like 10, 20 copies, I'll be happy, kind of thing.
ゴーストロア、めちゃくちゃ面白いです。こんなね、こういうの本当に好きじゃないですか。
This is such an awesome game. It is quality and deserves a spot as possibly the best ARPG ever made.
It's probably fair to say that it was a sleeper hit.
So this goes to show and that we can export some of our culture, which is something which we have been looking forward to do for quite a while.
I think recently we had a streamer cover the game, right? So some American guy, and then I guess he mentioned something about we had like a stingray dish in the game, right? So for that it was very weird. So he was like, oh wow, stingray, what is this? And like in the comments, like the whole bunch of people were like, oh, stingray is delicious, like you should come to Asia and eat it.
But I always like the detail on the second floor, the detail on the windows, the carvings, those tiles there. The detail was actually quite important to get it. I think somehow it just gave like Singaporeans a lot of hope, right? Because like one thing that's always been commonly said is that creative stuff from Singapore doesn't really do well.
The whole gaming culture is a very online culture, and it's a very international culture.
Even though they didn't know very much about Singapore culture,
people will roll with it, right?
You just have to make a fun game.
With everyone having access to the internet, they are not just Singaporean kids in a condominium in Punggol anymore. They are so interconnected to the outside world, much more than their parents or their grandparents would have been. It just means really the world is their oyster.
Games and toys are important because it's their part of growing up.
They actually lengthens the horizon further, that most kids know that there's a bigger world outside.
You remember back your toy, I'm sure there's some you remember more fondly, right? For certain reasons, right?
Like for example, if you bring out He-Man, most of the young boys who grew up in the 80s would know it. They may start then going off into where they lived, who they played with. So collective memory formed over certain items, I think it's very, very important. Singapore developed very, very fast. Sometimes you can get a bit lost, you can get a bit overwhelmed, but you always have this almost unchanging core that belongs to you that not many people can take away because it's your memory.